broadcasting for the DVC to all points unknown. If you're within the sound of my voice, you're listening to Welcome Home Podcast for the DVC.
Hello everyone, thank you for joining us on episode 4 of Welcome Home, a Disney Parks and Vacation Club podcast. I am Tom, and I'm here as always with my fellow Disney addicts, Trevor and Damon. How you guys doing today?
Doing good. How are you?
Great, doing well. We have a lot of things to talk about today, including a fond farewell to Wishes, which ended on Thursday, and the new show premiered last night, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to revisit Damon's point dilemma from the last episode, and we're going to talk about some Disney rumors. But first, before we do that, we are very, very excited today to welcome a special guest to the podcast. We have Nick Cotton, who is the owner of DVC Resale Market. He's here to talk to us a little bit about DVC Resale. We've noticed that it's a question that we get a lot. We hear a lot about it. People have questions about how it works, so we figure bring on an expert, right? So you can find Nick at dvcresalemarket.com. Thank you so much for joining us, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate being here and the invite, and happy to answer some questions and hopefully educate some folks on DVC Resale.
So Tom, will you allow me, since I'm actually closest to being the next resale purchase person, I'm going to kind of give Nick my scenario, and Nick, maybe if you can walk us through what you would kind of suggest for me, and maybe answer some of the questions that I have. I think that would be great. I think that would be a great way to approach this.
Yeah.
So,
and before he does that, I would love if he could tell us a little bit about his background, about his company, and that type of thing really quickly, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly, Damon, to get to your questions here in a moment. A little bit about my background. I did work directly for the Disney company for about 10 years. The first, just about 4 years, was actually as an industrial engineer, supported various areas of the Disney company in that capacity. One of the areas I did support as well was Disney Vacation Club. That's when I learned a lot about Disney Vacation Club, and then eventually went into Disney Vacation Club actually as a sales guide. Worked on land for a while, and then also worked on their cruise line for a while too, presenting the Disney Vacation Club out there. Then about 3 years ago, I had left the Disney company. I did create the DVC Resale Market. So a couple advantages, couple of reasons that kind of led me to that is, one is it's really nice being able to not only help buyers and being able to join the Disney Vacation Club, but it's also nice to be able to help sellers too. Being a guide there, I had several thousand members, and from time to time, you would get asked the question, well, something's changed, life changed, whatever. We need to sell this. Can you help us? And unfortunately, working for a developer, you can't do that. So it's nice to be able to kind of help out both sides. So that's a really good feeling. Resale does offer an opportunity for folks to be able to join, at more affordable prices. So that's also nice as well. But that's a little bit about, my background.
Wonderful. I think
that's great.
Yeah, that's a lot of background, that's for sure.
So he's an expert. He knows what he's talking about.
He's like an expert's expert. I don't even know if I consider him just an expert at this point.
So go ahead, Damon. Tell them all about your situation. And
Sure. So what I'm dealing with, Nick, and again, I'm looking for a couple different, hopefully a couple different solutions from you, some options. So I currently sit at 170 points. We've recently moved down to North Carolina, so I'm a lot closer. And what I really wanted to be able to do is go for a week, let's say every 2 years. That for some reason that's turned into every year, right? So I'm sitting on two contracts that exist with Disney directly, but now I want to add points. I'd like to be in the 270 range. So I'm kind of looking for another 100, let's say 150 point contract. And it just seems to me, since I already have 2 contracts with Disney, that the resale market may be the best solution for me. And here's kind of what I'm thinking. Would it be great? I'm in Saratoga, right? So I think my end date is 54, I think.
That's right.
Okay, would it be great to have all my points until 54? Sure. I think after 54, I might not need as many points because, I don't know, my kids will be older. I'll only be, staying in a studio at that point if I go with just my wife. So I'm wondering, Is it better for me to tack on some extra points to Saratoga or even, let's say, Bay Lake Resale? Or do I want to look at something that really maybe just gets me through the child years with my 3 kids?
Yeah, so one thing to keep in mind is whatever you do add on with, if it's something different than Saratoga, you're going to have home resort priority with just those points at that resort.
Yep.
So, for example, if it's Bay Lake, 100 points, you'll have 100 points priority at Bay Lake. The end date there is 2060. I mean, it's not terribly far off from the 2054 Saratoga end date. I would say one of the leading drivers in your decision should be, is there a resort out there that you are really wanting to book far in advance at, that you're struggling to book far in advance at right now? And go ahead.
I was going to say, Nick, so it's a little bit of a running joke here. I'm actually going in August, and I booked last week. I'm the person. While Tom would tell you he would probably book 12 months out. If I book 3 weeks out, I don't necessarily care where I stay.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so here's the thing. I mean, I break buyers up into 2 big categories as we kind of dissect what may be best for you. You've got the category that says, look, I'm going to go to Disney in October. I love food and wine. And if I don't get into Beach Club, I'm going to be unhappy, or some scenario like that, right? There's no doubt you need to join Beach Club in that scenario. Or if you're like, I go New Year's, I want to be able to walk in the Magic Kingdom. The answer is Bay Lake. So it's those situations where somebody has very particular criteria, and that it could be a challenge to get into if you don't have that 11-month booking window. The answer is pretty clear. You need to go with that resort. And another example is for people that want to go to Hilton Head in the summertime, or for people that want to go to Disneyland's Grand California, and they want to go just about any time of year almost, because it's a very small resort, and they would go with some frequency. So there's some scenarios there we really, really need to look at home resort priority. That being said, you probably fit into the other bucket, which is what makes the most economic sense, because I'm not going to typically book super far in advance. I just booked last week for August. I'm not, obviously, if you're booking last minute, you're probably not super particular, about which is like, I have to go to Grand Floridian every year, example, kind of thing like that. So in that case, you might put more of your emphasis on the economics. Now, when you look at the economics of the Disney Vacation Clubs, if you look at the long-term economics and you look at price, years left, and annual dues, those are your 3 economic factors. Almost always, and we do a blog on our site every 6 months, basically ranking the DVC resorts on this, and almost always Saratoga Springs is number 1 and Bay Lake Tower is number 2. So if you're kind of going to go in the economic decision, I think Saratoga Springs, your current home resort, there's nothing wrong with sticking with that same choice. Bay Lake is not a bad choice either. I mean, because it's number 2 economically. Between those 2, I would say it may come down to, if you kind of got that itch to say, you know what, I think at some point I'd really like to have that 11-month priority at Bay Lake, then great. That's not a bad economic choice either comparatively. So that may be a consideration. But, for you, I kind of sense it's an economic decision. But just keep in mind, if you branch out, let's say you get them at Bay Lake, that's where you would have that home resort priority at those points. Now, on the flip side of that, does it really hurt you for booking Saratoga if these 100 points are Bay Lake? Really not. I mean, Saratoga is by far the biggest Disney Vacation Club resort there is, and it's typically the easiest to book. I mean, the only thing that you really need that home resort priority for at Saratoga is going to be the tree houses, if that's something that you would frequently book. But outside of the tree houses, the priority is needed there. So I would say either Saratoga or Bay Lake, because they're both the strongest economic choices. I think between the 2. Then it would just come down to, do I kind of feel the itch that I'd like to get that 11-month priority with those points at Bay Lake, and would that benefit me at some point?
So Nick, the other thing that I found interesting is that, going on your site, what I saw was, Animal Kingdom, obviously, because it was, A for Animal Kingdom, right? It was the first one I was looking at. And I noticed there were different prices different point prices depending on which contract, was available. Can you kind of walk us through the whys of that? Again, because for me, I look at that and say, okay, Animal Kingdom at $87 a point versus, New Bay Lake through Disney at what is it, Tom? Like 165, 130? I don't even know what it is.
165, I think.
At 165.
Yeah.
So again, walk me through it, because even Animal Kingdom has a farther in advance date than Saratoga, right? By 3 years, I think, right? 2 or 3 years or something. But, is that something? So explain to me, one, I guess, why there's different prices on your site, I guess, and for all our listeners as well. And again, really the true benefit that I would see for, resale is price and kind of, where that sits in comparison to what Disney does.
Okay, so just to be clear, are you asking why Animal Kingdom may have different prices in the resale world, or why is it different than direct?
Nope. So I'm asking actually both. So the first one is why when I go to your site, I'll see some at $86 a point, some at $89. And then the second part of that question is probably for our listeners more than me, is that, why is there that difference and what's the benefit of your site?
Okay, got it. Perfect. Okay. So first, the differences in resale prices. So there's a few factors that'll contribute. Obviously, let's eliminate resort, because that one, because we're already talking about differences in just Animal Kingdom listings. So after you've got the resort, the other differences can be in size of the contract. So the smaller a contract is, typically the higher it's going to command in a per point price. And then conversely, the larger it is, it's going to go down. And the reason for that is kind of just basic economics, really. Same thing in your house neighborhood. I mean, if the smallest house in the neighborhood is typically going to go for a higher price per square foot than the bigger home, and the general reason for that is just the affordability of it. You have a much bigger audience for a 50-point contract than you are for a 500-point contract, right? I mean, you're going to have a lot more people who say, "Oh yeah, I can afford another $200 or $300 a year in dues." You're not necessarily going to have a huge audience and say, "Oh yeah, another $3 or $4 grand a year in dues. That's easy." There's going to be some people that say that, but it's not going to be the mass. And so that's kind of the reason for some of the price differences. Now the other factor is also going to be point availability, because you could have a contract that gets listed where they've got all the 16 points right now, all 17 and 18, and then on the opposite end of that, you could have a contract where they've used all the points out till 2019 at this point. So that also plays, a factor as well. So there's a couple different things in there. And then of course the other X factor out there is also what a seller wants to get, or maybe what they need to get. They may have a loan on it still, and they just can't come up. Maybe they're a little underwater, and they can't even afford to sell it at a certain price. So there could be that factor there too. Obviously as agents here, we advise them on market conditions and what we're seeing. But ultimately, the seller always has the final say in what they own and what they listed at.
Okay.
Let me ask you this, Nick. So, this is kind of a funny question, but a serious question. I always see a ton of Vero Beach contracts out there. Why is that?
I'll answer that real quick. And I do want to go back and finish the other part. I think the other part of that question was there was in reselling.
Oh, sorry, I apologize.
But, no, that's okay. Vero. It's funny, Vero, though, it's not, long-term economics. Yes, it's bad because it has a quicker end date of 2042. It does have the highest dues in the network. When you look at its, per point, Vero Beach is about $8.11 a point. It's a coastal property, so it's going to typically be higher on the dues. But the cost, obviously, is very appealing. So if you look at short-term economics on it, if you were just looking to hold the DVC product for about 10 years or less, Vero Beach would be very hard to beat because of the initial price tag on it. So why you may see a decent bit out there, it could be kind of quicker turnover because it does make a lot of sense in the short term, just maybe not so much in the long-term holding of it. But certainly, it does get a lot of attention when they hit the market because of the price tag. It is typically going to be your lowest priced DVC property because of the high maintenance fees on it. So they have a little more turnover maybe than some of the others. Getting back to the other question in regards to direct versus resale, when you look at Animal Kingdom is a great one to look at because when you look at the direct price of it, it's $165. Your typical resale price may be in the mid 80s per point. One thing about it is Disney. Like any time, they're a timeshare developer, Disney Vacation Development. And so, for them, like any developer, their goal is to really sell the new product, what they're currently developing, what they're building. And it's not necessarily to invest in what they've already sold. The profit margin is much, much more significant on what they have that's new versus investing in buying resale contracts and reselling them. So that being said, they're not going to have a strong goal to move a lot of Animal Kingdom right now because they've already developed it, they've sold it. That's where they get the highest margins on. So for them, there's not necessarily a super strong goal to move a lot of it. So like right now, for example, Bay Lake's 185 direct, or Grand Floridian's 185, etc. So it's never going to be a strong goal for them. So they're just going to price it to, hey, if we sell some of it that we bought back, or or whatever, then that's fine. But it's certainly not going to be the main goal. And when you look at the stuff that they're actively selling, like Alani or Polynesian, or now Copper Creek, the developers are typically going to have higher prices because for them, there's a lot of marketing costs that go along, with the sales. I mean, for everybody that says yes, there could be easily another 9 people that said no, but there's cost incurred for all 10 people. And so, that has to be accounted for. So that's typical of almost any timeshare developer. When you look at any kind of resale scenario, it's going to be a bit of a true marketplace in that somebody's selling this. If it doesn't sell at a certain price, if they've lost their job or something's happened to them in their life, they're gonna price it to where it's gonna move because they need to sell it. So it's gonna be kind of what somebody's willing to pay for it.
So Nick, so that leads me to I'm going to take this a little personal, right? Just because I'm in this kind of, I'm ready to do this. So the biggest thing for me is, the pit of my stomach says, man, I just feel more comfortable buying from Disney. Even we're talking double the cost, right?
Right.
In the pit of my stomach. Now, I already have points at Disney. Just again, for me personally, as well as our listeners, sell me on why I don't need that bad feeling in the pit of my stomach. Why I shouldn't be worried buying those 100 points from you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I mean, obviously, there's a huge assurance when you buy from Disney directly. There's no doubt about it. Plus, to be full disclosure, it's also more convenient. I mean, when you add on or you buy directly from Disney, the points are there day one. You remember from right away. But the assurance I will tell you in resale is, and a lot of people aren't aware of this, is when we get a listing, we do verify the point activity with Disney. Then whenever any contract that gets resold in DVC space has to be sent into Disney to be verified. So because they have right of first refusal, so they have the opportunity to buy that contract back. Now they have to honor, of course, the same terms and conditions. So the seller's protected. It's not like the deal can be altered when they're reviewing it or anything. But again, Disney verifies it to see, okay, was there, because the only thing really, a seller can't go in there and trash the room, right? I mean, these are all shared with points. But a seller could go and use some of the points that are on it. Well, again, it's being verified once again when Disney reviews it for right of first refusal. So you again have that kind of quality assurance check on it. Then it gets reviewed a last time when the title company has it, and then they do a final update or the final check on the points, and then there's a final transfer by Disney. That's kind of the last step, and then there's again a check to make sure everything's correct. So there's a lot of assurances built in along the way. And then in terms of anything financial with it, well, the title company orders an estoppel from Disney that shows them all the financials in the contract. So there's a title search done. There's also title insurance purchased. So, I mean, it's as reliable as you buying your next house. If you go, it's the same process. You got title insurance, you got estoppels, you have, you have checks for any clouded title, all that stuff. The same kind of stuff is done.
Gotcha. Okay.
Now, I know you got to get going here, Nick. So one more thing before you go, really quickly. You just mentioned all those things that go into this. Just what's the typical timeline if Damon wanted to buy tomorrow from now until when he made an offer? What's the typical timeline when that gets completed?
That's a good question as well. So typically we set people up with expectations of about 50 to 80 days. Now it can be closer to 50 or the 80. It kind of depends a little bit on Disney. And so that's why we really never give any kind of guarantees because it's not all in our control. So what happens in the process is that right of first refusal, which can, we've seen that go as fast as a few days. We've seen it take up to 30 days before. Then after let's assume it gets waved through by Disney, then the title company orders an estoppel, which can take, anywhere. Sometimes they have the estoppels almost instantaneously. Sometimes they provide them about 2 weeks later. And then once that estoppel comes in, the title company can then prepare closing documents, and then they typically email those to both buyer and seller. And then once those documents come back, keep it in mind, the seller does have a deed that needs to get notarized. The buyer will need to get a mortgage notarized if they are financing. Once those documents come back and the funds come in, they can then close the contract out. And then Disney takes about 2 weeks to make a final transfer of the points. So all that from A to Z can be about 50 to 80 days. So that's pretty much the expectation I would have of any buyer or seller, with reselling.
Great.
That's actually good. Yeah, I know, Nick, yes, you have to go, but, what I'd actually like to do is, and I'm hoping that maybe, we can kind of work through this process. I'm in the process of actually moving. So once I move out of the house I'm currently in, that's when I'm going to end up with some extra money. I'd like to actually walk through the whole process with Nick and kind of document it on the podcast, actually purchasing points from them.
Yeah, and I think we could talk to Nick for hours at a time.
I know we could.
So we'll definitely have to have you back, Nick, because we've got a lot of questions, and we really, really appreciate your time. Can you tell everybody where they can find you, where's best to reach you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Damon, that's a great idea, and I would love to assist you with that, and certainly be able to document it for all your listeners. So to find us, you can find us at dvcresalemarket.com. Also, our phone number, if you want to reach us by phone, is 1-844-382-7767.
Great. Thank you so much, Nick. We really appreciate your time today. We'll share all that stuff on our Facebook as well and mention that again. But we really appreciate your time, and thanks so much for coming on, and we will definitely get you on again in the future.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Nick.
Okay, that was great. Thanks, Nick, so much. And, we're going to move on to some different things. We actually are going to revisit a topic from the last episode where at the very end we were talking about a dilemma that Damon was having about his next trip regarding points. And the reason why we were bringing this back up is we actually got an email from one of our listeners just mentioning some of the things that we didn't even talk about, which, as a DVC podcast, we probably should have brought these things up. But we got this email from Willie, who's a listener, and thank you, Willie, for sending us an email. We appreciate it. And he said, hey, guys, loving the podcast so far. Just listened to the most recent podcast and wanted to let Damon know that instead of borrowing from his next year point total for a small amount like 3 points, he can rent from DVC those one-time points for $15 each. $45 isn't that bad, so maybe he could just do it that way. Just thought I'd share. Thanks so much for that, Willie. That's a great point we didn't bring up, and a lot of people don't know that you can rent DVC points. They're not really renting it. They're one-time use points that you purchase. But, so that's a great point that you can bring up. And really quickly, and we're going to explain points in a second here. Trevor's going to give you his expert, knowledge about DVC points. But,
yep.
Just so everybody knows, if you're not aware of it, you can purchase one-time points from DVC. You can do 24 points each year, which you can buy, if you just need, if you have a shortage, you need a couple extra points maybe to upgrade or to go to another resort, and they are $15 per point. You cannot cancel them or refund your purchase of the one-time use points. So it is kind of a risky thing to do, because if you do buy them, there's no canceling it, there's no refund of it, so you're not able to transfer, bank them, any of that. So now if you do cancel your trip, you can still use the points you buy in that use year, so they go kind of like into the holding account. So Trevor, you want to talk a little bit about points and just explain points, because we realize that we're saying points, and who knows what that means, right?
Okay, so I know we've had some feedback on that as well, that not everybody understands when, like, we're all talking about points, but what are points, right? So the first thing to know, and actually first to put a disclaimer on this, I'm going to leave banking and borrowing out of this entirely, because that's like the whole next level and it confuses things. So
that's another podcast episode.
Yeah. So at its most basic level, when you go to Disney, when you go to DVC, whether it be through DVC Direct or Resale Market, you're buying a contract. It's a retail contract. So it's a
real estate contract.
Real estate contract. I totally flubbed that word. So it's a real estate contract.
It's okay.
In that contract, it specifies that you have an exact number of points, whether it's 25 points, 50 points, 100 points, whatever. That points that you get is how many points you're allowed in a single use year to make use of at Disney. Your use year changes though, so you also need to look at that in the contract. So some use years start in January, some of them start in June, and basically what the use year is when the points reset. So let's say your use year, so in my case, my use year is up in June. So once June hits, I get my next year's worth of points. So every year in June, my point, like I can use up all my points, and then next June, my point value refreshes back to the 100 points that I have to start with. So you've got this contract, you have X number of points on it. When you go and look at booking stuff with DVC, each room has different point values, and it does vary. They've got different seasons of the year. So basically like busy season, like spring, summer, fall, winter, it kind of lines up with that, but the certain times like around Easter, you'll find that the point values go up, and you can look at the charts. We'll see if we can actually find a link to one of the charts and link it with the podcast episode. But when you look at the chart, they tell you for different times of the year, and they actually have them broken down by weeks. So for example, you can look at like first week of September, and each night will cost you, like at a particular resort, it'll say like 18 points a night or something like that. So you got to figure out for the duration of your stay how many points it's going to cost you. And so if you're looking to buy a contract, you do need to look at these things for sure. So you need to look at the time of year that you're going, because it affects the approximate point cost. And also keep in mind that it does change year to year, but you look at the approximate point cost and then the duration of your stay, and you can kind of figure out how many points you would need to do that stay. But like Tom said, you're not completely locked in with that number of points. You do have some flexibility to add on some temporary points, or borrow and bank from previous years or the next year. But like I said, we'll get into that a little later.
And the only thing to talk about also is each room size is also a different amount of points. So a family of, let's say, well, actually probably perfect here, Tom, Trevor, and myself, Tom may go and stay in a studio. Trevor may go and stay in a one bedroom, and Damon may stay in a 2-bedroom because he's got 3 crazy kids, right? So that definitely affects the amount of points that you'll need per resort as well. But again, a whole nother discussion. We just wanted to make sure we were letting people in on, an understanding of what the points are, which now brings me back to my dilemma, which I think I may have made a bad decision, right? I guess we all make bad decisions. So what I ended up doing is that I ended up waitlisting for Boardwalk, which I got in like a day. It was crazy. So that was nice. But I ended up going with I had 100 points. I only ended up using 95. I couldn't figure out a better way because I couldn't do another night because we just didn't have the time, right?
Yeah.
And Boardwalk going up one whole level, right? So from a 1-bedroom to a 2-bedroom was going to actually eclipse the extra 24 plus 5 points, right? So it would have put me over. Yeah.
You would have been you would have been probably swinging either into your next year or
correct,
having to rent points or something.
From a 1-bedroom to a 2-bedroom, there's a fairly there's a bigger difference between 1 and 2 bedrooms than a studio and 1-bedroom, that's for sure. So for me, I ended up doing what was most cost effective for me this year, which was unfortunately losing 5 points. Now, I'm still happy about that because I got where I wanted to go and I'm going for the amount of days I want to go, but I'm eating 5 points on them.
Here's a question. When do your points expire?
So these points I have to use by November.
Okay. Is there any way you could rent out those last 5 points? Or is there
that's a Nick
amount?
Question, right? I think there's probably a minimum amount, but I could be wrong. But see, here's the thing. Even, again, the amount of effort for $75, probably not there for me.
Well,
Yeah,
and by the way, everybody, we are going to do another podcast episode just about renting points. So that's going to come up. We are going to get somebody on this podcast like Nick that can talk about renting points too.
So that's kind of where I ended up. I'm at, like I said, I think 95 points. I had 100. I'm not upset about it at all. I'm sure there's a lot of people that might be upset about something like that. I am not, because I am going to Boardwalk, and that makes me happy. And Tom, I booked Boardwalk 3 months out.
Yeah,
3 months out. It was waitlisted, but I did get it.
And meanwhile, I was waitlisted on Boardwalk for probably 4 or 5 months now and didn't get it. And my trip is in 35 days or so, and so I actually started. I started stalking the DVC website like every hour to see if there was some availability. And so what I did was I actually ended up booking. The 3 days came up. The first 3 days of my trip came up. So then I just booked those 3 days and had my Old Key West for the rest of it, right? So then the next day came up, the next day after that. So then I got that next day. So now I've got 4 nights at Boardwalk. So the last 2 nights were going to be at Old Key West, but we were thinking we want to go somewhere else. I've never done a split stay. I don't know if you guys have done a split stay.
We talked about this a little bit. My
Yeah.
wife refuses to ever do it again. Our big thing is, though, we unpack. So when we get to
Yeah.
Disney, we open the drawers. The kids' stuff goes in the drawers. We have a drawer that's specifically for stuff you've already worn that's been dirty. So, like, it takes us a while to pack and unpack, and my wife had just said it will never happen again. Now, that also was a trip that we did the medium level. What do they call the medium level?
Moderate.
Moderate.
Yeah, which, again, my personal opinion, I would never, ever do moderate ever again in my life. Ever, ever, ever. So those two things together may have been a problem.
Sure.
But my wife will refuse to let us do a split stay. So I would love to do it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We've never done it, so I mean, I'm interested to see how it's going to go. But it ended up those last 2 days. We really didn't want to stay at Old Key West, although it seems like a lot of people really like Old Key West. It just felt to us like it wasn't a place we really wanted to stay. And so I saw 2 nights for the last 2 days of our vacation opened up at Poly, and I've never stayed at Poly, and it's been on our bucket list of Disney resorts. Yeah, and so I was like, you know what, 2 nights. I mean, it was 50 points for 2 nights at Poly.
Well, and that's interesting. It brings us back to the point thing real quick. So what's the benefit of Old Key West again, right? Like, it's points.
It's points, yeah, and that's the thing. And so, like, yeah, you can do it for the least amount of points, but, there's something to my wife and I, we really enjoy walking into, the hotel and having the lobby there and everything kind of being indoors and together. And you know what I mean? Like, it seems like Old Key West and Saratoga are like really spread out. I mean, I don't know. I've never stayed there, but that's kind of the impression I got. But everybody seems to love them. So, I maybe I just, we were just being weird about it. But, we really wanted to stay at Poly. So that was, kind of worked out well for us. But
yeah. And also, I mean, you got to look at it too, is like, so to Damon's point is, a lot of times it's about the economics of it, but also, like, this is your vacation too, right? So
exactly,
you should be able to do what you enjoy. And if you really want to go and stay at somewhere like the Poly, then I think a split stay is great for that kind of thing. And I've been saying to my wife too that, like, we're definitely staying at the Poly coming up in September because it is our first trip and we want to go there. We want to do everything at the Poly. In the future, we're going to talk about split stays and more so that we just want to kind of shop around and see what the other resorts are all about. And I think that's really a good way to do it because when you're doing it in the middle of a trip, like your thoughts about each resort are fresh enough that you can kind of go, okay, I like this one for this and I like this one for that, versus, if you wait 6 months or a year, you kind of come back and you're not really thinking about your previous trips. You're not really comparing anything. You're just kind of going, well, I stayed here this time and whatever, right?
Yeah.
So, what I also find too is that, again, for us, is that, once you've done all the rides and you've kind of done a lot of Disney, there's a lot of value to be had at each one of the hotels in terms of experiences that maybe when you go for the first, I don't know, even 10 times, that you just don't get to experience because you're caught up with the parks, right? Mm-hmm. So I think the split stay has some benefit there, almost like visiting different parks. And for us, like I said, this is, my next dilemma is, do I go just to Pandora for a day or do I buy 2 days of passes and go to Epcot as well, right? Like, so that's my dilemma for my next trip that's going to be coming up in August. But there's still 2 days where I have nothing to do, right? We're not going to the park. The max that we're going to the park out of these 4 days is 2 days. So again, that's where the resort comes in of like, hey, what is there to do at the resort? And that split stay sometimes is a little bit of a benefit to be able to do different things.
Well, that's why it's great too that you're staying at Boardwalk for that situation, because there is so much stuff going on around Boardwalk.
That's what I'm happy about. Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
And it's such a nice spot to be in, and that's we're so excited to stay there. And you're totally right, because doing the split stay really it lets you kind of have like a tasting menu of like of hotels, right? And that's kind of what we were thinking about is, and you're right, it's your vacation. You should, and we always have a rule when we go on vacation that we just, if we want something, we're gonna get it. Like, so that's the rule on vacation. There's no budgets in mind on vacation. We just, if we see something in a souvenir place we want to get, we buy it. If my wife wants to get lobster at dinner, she gets it. That's just, you're on vacation, enjoy yourself, right? And so for us, that's kind of how we look at it too, and that's why I was kind of like, you know what? I know it's 50 points for 2 nights, and that's crazy, but we've always wanted to stay at Poly, and we love the Poly. I mean, we love the bar that's in there, whose name is escaping me at the moment. I don't know why.
Trader Sam's.
Trader Sam's, thank you. We love that bar. We love Ohana. The funny thing is, we're actually going to be eating at Ohana while we're staying at Boardwalk, but that's another story. But yeah, which is fine.
So something interesting, that going back to the whole difference in points thing. So when you're going, Tom, which is in June, right?
Yes. 35 days or 36
days.
Yeah,
so you're, for 2 nights, you're talking about 25 points a night.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm going to the same hotel, so Polynesian in September, it's 18 points a night.
It's a huge difference.
Yeah, and the big reason for that is that it's the change in season, the busy season versus the non-busy season.
And I happen to miss the change. I want to say like the change is like August 16th or something.
Yeah.
And I'm actually going like the 3 days before that. Kind of a little upset about that, but nothing I can do about it. Again, I'm not an angry DVC owner. Like, again, some people may be, but it is what it is. But yes, I was like, if I had stayed the next week, I could have gone probably 6 days.
Yeah, but again, it doesn't always work out that way. But
nope. And we happen to go different times all the time. So again, you don't have to always be locked into those specific points. Like I said, we've gone in August, we've gone in September, we've gone in October, we've gone in May. Like, we've gone all different times of the year. So, you do have to factor it in, but, you always realize that you can go different times and get more value at certain times of the year.
Yeah, that's true. And I for me, I've mentioned this before in the podcast. We really can only go during the busy times. We can only go during the most expensive seasons. I would love to go during the times where it's cheaper to stay. We could spend less points, but it's just a challenge for us based on schedules and time off and things like that. So,
and the thing is that you have to remember as well. So don't think about it from the aspect of you're losing X amount of points. Listen, if you were to not have any points and have to pay, it is more expensive just to go to Disney that time of the year. So when you factor in points, keep that in mind. It's not like we're saying that every time you go to Disney, it's a $2,000 stay, but your points could fluctuate. No. Every time you go to Disney, just your hotel in general is going to fluctuate in price.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so you really got to more look at it as, I got to pay an extra 7 points to stay there in June, but I mean the difference in the rack price is quite substantial.
Oh, yeah. Well, and that's, and the part of this too, if points are still kind of like, in any of our listeners' heads, you're still trying to figure it out. Points really, what they represent is just your ownership stake in the hotel that you bought into, right? So I own at Bay Lake, so me having 100 points at Bay Lake is a certain percentage of the overall ownership of Bay Lake, and they just kind of use points as their currency. What's that?
You own a closet.
He owns a brick in the lobby.
Yeah,
not even a closet.
Yeah, it's like 0.00575. It's like,
Yeah.
But that's kind of the idea behind it, and really the points are just the currency by which they use them. But the cool thing about points, though, too, the points charts, the points per night always stay the same going forward, right? So you're kind of saving yourself from the inflation of the rack. So
that's interesting, though, because I think Trevor brought this up too, right? So while they currently have stayed the same, there is no guarantee of them staying the same. Isn't that correct?
Well, I was guaranteed that by my DVC rep, but I don't know.
So here's the confusing part on this, and maybe I can help elaborate on this, is each hotel has a certain amount of points allocated to it. So for the entire hotel, they get something like 100,000 points for the entire year. How they cut up those points throughout the year can fluctuate. So, and this is where they look at busy time versus not busy time, and if they're trying to get people to change their when they go there. If they find that everybody's swarming the place in June, they're going to up the point values for the individual nights in June. But if they do that, if they bring it up in June, somewhere else in the year, the point values have to come down so that the total number stays exactly the same. So you'll never see that all of a sudden the points get higher and higher and higher consistently across the year, but you may see them fluctuate for different parts of the year where they adjust how they want people to occupy the rooms at that particular time.
And that's funny. See, that's why we have Trevor on here, Tom.
That is a great piece
I didn't know that.
No, I didn't know that that's how they do it. I know that when I met with them initially, and what I've always heard is that the points will never, like, they don't change. The point values don't ever change, up or down. But, so that makes sense, though, that they can shift based on seasonality as long as it's the same amount overall that they're charging. So that makes total sense. But that's part of why DVC is a good investment, is because you're protecting yourself from the inflation of the room prices, because the rack room prices are just going to keep going up.
Yeah, exactly.
That's for sure. So I guess the other thing that I just want to mention, and I touched base on this a little bit before we move on to something that, again, I've already said I don't really care about. My big question now
We're going to make you care about it, Damon.
is, do I want to just go to Pandora for 1 day, 1 park tickets, or do I want to go 2 days and go to Epcot, which, again, we missed out going on the Frozen by like a week last time, and my daughter is 7, right? So do we want to do that? And again, there's also a lot of good food there, right? So I'm always good with that. That's the question that I have. Do I want to spend that extra money? I think it goes from approximately, I'm going to use approximate numbers. I think if I go for 1 day Pandora's $500, Pandora plus Epcot or whatever other park I wanted to go to if we decide to change our mind, I think kicks us up to about $900.
Okay. So I've got 2 thoughts on this. One, if you're going to Pandora, I guess this depends on how badly you want to experience both the rides. So the thing to keep in mind is that with Pandora opening, there's 2 new rides there. There's the Flight of Passage and the Navi River Cruise. Mm-hmm. With the way Disney does their fast passes now, those are both in the same tier, so you can't book them both in the same day.
Correct.
If you really wanted to guarantee that you do both without having to, stand in potentially horrifically long lines, like 2 hours plus,
probably.
If you do the 2 days, you can 1 day hit the Flight of Passage, and then the next day you hit.
See, if I was doing 2 days, it'd be single park only to keep my costs down. Because if I go park hopper, now I'm at $1,200.
Right.
So
but I'm saying if you choose to do 2 days at Animal Kingdom, you could do
that.
No.
So my is either 1 day Pandora and nothing else, or Pandora and Epcot so I could see Frozen. So the way I'm going to get around that fast pass is that the day that we go to Animal Kingdom is an early open day, I think. And I'm just going to go rush the line. Everyone in my family can run, right?
Go
so again, I don't really like watching the people run like that kind of like, if you're running, like I kind of have to look a little sideways at you, but we'll walk briskly. Yeah, we'll walk briskly to where we need to be and then see the other one and spend our time in Animal Kingdom. The question is it worth picking up that extra day at Epcot for about $400 to give us something, extra to do in our 4 days? So we still have 2 days of nothing, 2 days of park, but also to see Frozen.
I would say, I guess it depends on how much you like Epcot, right? So, in my mind, I would probably do the extra.
You want to know
right?
something really interesting about my last trip to Epcot? And again, we've gone to Disney, I think we count this, let's just call it 10 to 13 times to make it easy, right? Because I don't remember exactly. I went into a store that I'd never been in before.
Oh, yeah.
It was a store in the back of, must have been China, and it was in the back of China. And I was like, I have never been in this store before, ever.
And
it's huge.
Phoenix.
It's gigantic.
Can you believe I've never been in there? Ever.
No.
And I was just like, wow.
Yeah, that whole pavilion is like a maze, right? You just kind of wander, and it's like, oh, there's more back here, right?
Exactly.
And I don't know if it's China or Japan, but the last time we went, we stumbled upon where they do. Have you seen where they do the pearls?
That's Japan.
Yeah, that's Japan. I thought it was Japan, but like I never knew that was there. And I mean, we've been to Epcot a ton of times, and I just never knew that was there. And then
I saw a bunch of blog posts about it too. Recently, I've seen a lot of blog posts about that, and I was like, wow. Again, I've seen the place, but you could make it an experience, I guess, which is interesting.
Honestly, Japan is the one that I hang out in way too much because I just love the culture of it. So.
Yeah, that's interesting.
For me, if you're an Epcot lover, I would totally do it. I think it'll be worth it. Because my wife and I like just walking around Epcot because it's such a pleasant park, and it's just it's such a pretty park, and so we're a big fan of just walking around that. If I were you, I would, but it really just depends on because we love Soarin', so we'll go on Soarin' a couple times at least. We'll try to go on test track.
The other thing
times.
that we did too was we said to the kids, we said, what do you kind of want to do? And they're like, oh, well, obviously we want to go to the park 2 days. And I was like, all right, well, maybe you guys would just pay the difference this time. And they're like, yeah, we'll do that. Definitely. We don't want to sit around. Yeah.
I think that says something to making the choice is, looking at Epcot, definitely Frozen. Unfortunately, Frozen, Test Track, and Soaring are all first tier at Epcot. So if you really want to do Frozen, you're probably going to want to fast pass that one.
Yep.
You can probably rope drop Test Track, and Soarin', I think, is probably the easiest of the three to get in.
Ooh, see, and that's funny. I would.
Now that they've opened the third theater,
is that what it is?
That's what it is.
Yeah.
So the line
when
is way
was that
shorter.
third theater opened?
Last year. So,
okay, and that would make perfect sense because what I found was the exact opposite. But now that you're saying that, there's been times where I've walked on the Test Track, which is crazy.
Yeah, and
go Trevor.
The thing that's happened too is Soarin' Around the World has had enough time to kind of settle in that it's not getting the same amount of crowds that it did before.
Okay, that makes perfect sense then.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. Last year we went and we went just kind of we're walking by Soarin' and we saw that it said 45-minute wait, which in and of itself 45-minute wait for Soarin' is pretty short. And then when we got online, us just knowing where the end of the line is. I think I said to my wife, I'm like, this line is not 45 minutes. This is 15, 20 at the most. And we blew through in like 15 minutes. And then you're talking in the afternoon. So I was like, that's great. Ever since they opened that third theater, it's really helped a lot. It's the same thing with Toy Story at Hollywood Studios. Ever since they opened the third track, really cut down on the crowds. Because, I remember, you were talking about rope drop, the run over. I remember a couple of years ago, we were there, rope drop at Hollywood Studios, and they actually had all of the people that worked Toy Story were holding a giant rope and slowly walking everybody over to the ride.
Oh yeah,
I love when they do that.
Yeah, and it's just like okay, so obviously like people were trampling each other, and so like because otherwise they wouldn't be doing this, and so but it's always funny when you go to Epcot in the morning though too, because you get that big mass of people, and then as soon as you get into the middle where the fountain is, everybody kind of splits off, right? So you have the people that are rope dropping, Test Track, and then the people that are rope dropping Soarin', and they're on opposite sides, and it's just kind of a funny thing to witness in the morning.
I think Toy Story is so interesting because, while I agree with you, the lines have definitely gotten shorter at Toy Story. They've gone from 180 minutes to 100 minutes, right? And listen, that's great,
still an hour
right?
and a half. Yeah.
It's still an hour and a half at the end of the day. My favorite ride of all time, probably outside of any sort of thrill ride, is Toy Story, without a doubt. And I would love to experience it. I remember when the paper fast passes were around, we would do it at least 3 times a day.
Oh, yeah.
And those were great days, right?
We've done
that
it at
doesn't
Disneyland
exist.
so many times, like because it's exactly the same, right? And same deal. Like we'll get it on it as many times as we can. So
now I'm lucky if I get on once, right? I mean, honestly, I get on once. And I don't shut the parks down. For the people that shut the parks down, like Tom and our friends that we usually travel with, they say that those lines get a lot easier towards the end of the night, especially something like Toy Story, because it is, a lot of kids, and because it does not have any sort of really requirements around it, right? So that at the end of the night, it definitely gets better. So.
Well, see, we always rope drop Toy Story. So what I always do is I schedule a fast pass for Toy Story as early as I can in the morning, and then we rope drop it, and then we immediately use our fast pass and get back, or sometimes we just get right back on the standby line, and then we'll go on it 3 times in a row if you do it the right way. Because like usually the line nowadays it's not getting that bad anymore.
My arm hurts after 3 days in a row, though.
I know, from pulling the string hard.
Yeah, like we have
rapid fire.
pretty high competition level in our family. So there's a lot to be said for whoever wins Toy Story for the day.
You know my big complaint about Toy Story? Sorry, Trevor, real quick.
No.
So my big complaint about Toy Story right now, and maybe they've done this, but I haven't seen anything about the Disney things about it, is now they're doing the long range Magic Band thing where they can check for photos. They're putting your name up at the end of It's a Small World. But how come at the end of Toy Story my name isn't up there with my score? Like that's like they should have the scores and all the names.
If you get a high enough score, it is, Tom.
Oh, it is now?
No, I'm just busting you. I'm just saying you're not doing good enough to get it. Yeah.
Well, I'm usually highest in the vehicle, so I want my name up there to say highest in the vehicle.
Highest in the last 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's right. But I mean, like that seems like the best application of that technology of all the rides, and they haven't done it yet that I've seen anyway.
My guess is that Toy Story is going to get a refresh with the new movie.
Probably.
And I think you'll probably see something like that. So
well, and a new entrance too. So
I would like to point out that we somehow got from Epcot over to Hollywood Studios.
Yeah. All right. Sorry, we're going to stop that.
All right.
Yep. So I'm going to bring us back on track again, and then I'm going to hit my mute and probably take a little nap here while you guys talk about Wishes, because I really don't care about Wishes. I hate to say that as a Disney person. I don't care about any of the shows, the nighthome shows.
But I'll try and make this interesting for you.
So. Yes.
Okay. So I'll keep myself on mute, but I'll jump in if I need to.
Yeah.
So we want to talk about Wishes. Obviously, it wasn't last night, but it was May 11th was the last night of Wishes after 14 years. Started in 2003. It was immediately replaced by the premiere last night of Happily Ever After. So I don't know how you feel about it, Trevor. I have always loved Wishes. I always thought it was a really great show. I did think it was starting to show its age a little bit. I think it was time for a replacement, and I'm really encouraged by a lot of the early reviews I'm reading about Happily Ever After, but I don't know what your thoughts are on it or how you feel about it.
So for me, again, going back to we haven't been there in a long time, I'm not as emotionally attached to Wishes. I mean, it was a great show, but we didn't spend a lot of time waiting for it. Like we caught it a couple of times as we were getting off of rides and whatnot. So we weren't really, I'm definitely not as invested in it. I know reading a lot about it in the last couple of years, and I do kind of wish that I had seen it before it closed. But the flip side of that, though, is that knowing Disney and knowing that how they've made use of their technology in the last couple of years, I'm actually expecting that Happily Ever After is going, like after the initial shock of Wishes going away, you're going to find in a year or two that Happily Ever After, everyone's going to be like, oh my God, this is amazing. Don't take it away.
It's gonna basically, I said this to my wife, I feel like it's everything with Disney where it's like, we only remember the last thing, right? Like how many people remember what was before Wishes, right? Like people were probably upset when that went away too, right? So, 10 years from now, if they're talking about replacing Happily Ever After, everyone's going to be like, you can't replace Happily Ever After, like, because it's going to become the new one. But yeah, I think you're totally right. And based on all the early reviews I've seen, I mean, some of you out there that read Disney blogs, a lot of these Disney blogs can be really negative, especially when they're replacing a classic with something new. But
like
I mean,
the
everything...
Tower of Terror thing, and
like the Tower of Terror thing, Frozen Ever After, I mean, all that stuff. And I mean, everything I've read has been really positive. Just like saying that it's a technological marvel, that that's a lot of them saying it's the best nighttime show they've ever produced, that it's they did things in there that they've never seen before that are just they thought were impossible, like all sorts of stuff.
So here's the great thing about this, and I love how this show came about, because you could actually see it coming if you were paying attention to how rides and everything have been evolving in the last couple of years. So the first thing I'll compare to is, and I guess going back to the part about, when they take stuff away is, I grew up with Main Street Electrical Parade. Like that was the first parade that I saw in Disneyland. And when I heard about Paint the Night, I was skeptical at first. When I saw Paint the Night, holy crap. Like it's, sorry, it is like just
so well
amazing show. So when I look at how they did that, I obviously had very high hopes for Happily Ever After. The next thing to look at is this technology. Disney doesn't do things with just one particular project in mind. Things are always intertwined together. I could see this coming when I saw Pirates in Shanghai, and when I saw the Frozen Broadway show in Disneyland come out. They're using for both of those things. They're using like a texture mapping projection technology, which I know they were using it to an extent in Wishes, but that technology has really come a lot farther. And I think when you look at, like, they started with those smaller things, and I know, like, a full ride like Pirates, you say, well, it's a smaller thing, but when you're looking at projection mapping in a ride in an enclosed environment versus the entire Cinderella castle, like, they're scaling this thing up, right?
Yeah. It's like they started trying it out on a smaller scale, and now they've improved the technology so much that they're rolling it out what they've been working on for years, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so I obviously, like I said, I was very optimistic about this new show, because it's like, okay, Disney doesn't just, throw stuff out and go, hey, we kind of did it, and it, like, I hope it works. No, they've been testing this. This has been coming for a while now. So
yeah, and the projection mapping that they're doing is, I mean, if anybody out there hasn't seen even the show that they were doing before the fireworks, where it was just a straight projection show, the stuff that they would transform the castle into, I mean, you'd literally stand there and just go, how are they doing this? Because it didn't even look like the castle anymore. It would look like whatever they were trying to make it look like, and it's like. You're standing in front of it, and you kind of can't believe your eyes. You kind of can't believe what you're seeing.
Yeah,
and it's amazing. And I can't wait to see too the projection show on the Tree of Life at Animal Kingdom too, because the last time we were there, we missed that one by like a couple weeks. And I've heard that one is fantastic as well. Just and it's random, I guess, that it just happens whenever. Whenever it's going to happen, and then but I've heard that one's amazing too, and there's also a lot.
It is actually, right? How long has that one been around for now?
I mean, less than a year, I think.
Yeah.
It was when
when
Animal Kingdom started nighttime operations, which was yeah,
it was pretty cool.
But yeah, no, Damon, I think you're missing out. You got to go check out the new show.
What time is that show? I feel like I'm in bed by the time.
No, it's at 9 o'clock.
Yeah, like I said, I think I'm in bed by that time. We usually leave the park 6, 7 o'clock.
Okay, here's what you do, Damon. You go back to your hotel like 3 o'clock. You take a 2-hour nap. Have some dinner, and then come back.
We did that when the kids were a lot younger. Now I feel like, I mean, when those shoes come off, those feet aren't going out again.
Well, I mean, just from all the things I've seen, people were just like in amazement of it. And apparently, it's really great. But I don't know if there's, for me, I'm always, of the opinion that a lot, not always, but a lot of times new things are better.
Here's an interesting question I have though.
Yeah.
Can you see that from anywhere outside of the park?
Yeah, so that's actually, it's funny you bring that up, because that was one of the comments I was seeing last night, from some of the people, is that, you can see some of it from Top of the World. You definitely probably can't, I would say you definitely can't see any of it from, like, the beach at Poly. Like, no way.
Well, you can see the castle from Poly,
the top of it,
but yeah, you're not going to see the full thing for sure.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, but the thing is, I mean, even with Wishes, you really couldn't see that. I mean, and I've said this many times, I love Top of the World. It's a really cool place to hang out. The drinks are great. The view is great. I don't think it's a great place to watch the fireworks. I've never been a fan. We've done it before, but it's only because we've seen it in the park too. Like, it's kind of almost weird because they're like off to the side. And
so if I'm going though, right, and I'm not going to Magic Kingdom at all, right?
Yeah, sure.
So where is the best spot to at least catch a glimpse of it? You're saying
probably Top of the World, then I would say.
Well,
but
I would actually say right outside the Main Street gate.
That's true. You could do that too.
Yeah, because I've seen people do that where they don't actually go into Magic Kingdom. That they would just go watch Wishes from.
You can't see it as far down as the boat dock, though, right?
No,
or the monorail platform, right?
Not.
Neither one of those.
No, because it's like a gradual grade going down, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of go out of view. But I mean, actually, I guess now thinking about, because the thing about Wishes was that you could watch it from the gate, because a lot of it was the fireworks. So you were missing the castle stuff. But I guess if you wanted to see the castle stuff, the Polynesian would probably be the better choice.
That's true.
But the Polynesian just not on the beach, though, you're saying?
Yeah.
On the beach?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's an interesting thought.
And that's Wishes didn't rely as much on the projection stuff, mostly because they just were still toying with that technology. There was a little bit of it, but it wasn't like key to the show. Like you could watch the because it was more about fireworks and the music and the timing of the fireworks to the music and those types of things. But this new show seems like it is. There's a lot of effects that happen on the castle itself. It seems like there's like pyrotechnics that happen. I've seen a lot of things about like lighting and like lasers and smoke and all sorts of crazy stuff. So I almost feel like for this one, if you want to get the whole experience, it seems like you are going to have to be in the park to do it. But I mean, I don't know. I prefer to be in the park anyway for that because, half the time people right after that, you have that crazy run to the buses where everybody leaves like as the finale's happening, and me,
just stand there and
I just stand there and then we go to the rides, we're like, okay, it's over. Let's go ride some more stuff, so, but yeah, no, I mean, I think you should at least check it out because it is such a cool show. I mean, it looks like a cool show. I'm gonna find out when we get there, and if everybody's lucky, I'll live stream it on our page. But
you'll have to excuse me if I don't watch because I'm trying not to spoil it for myself.
I don't blame you. I don't want to ruin it. We didn't watch the live stream of it last night. Disney live streamed it last night for the first show, and we did not watch it because we want to experience it in person. But that being said, I love all the nighttime shows. I know, Damon, you're not all about the nighttime shows, but Trevor, are you into like Phantasmic and Illuminations and all those shows? Yeah,
Phantasmic is a favorite for us for sure.
Mm-hmm. And it's different at Disneyland, right? It's a different show at Disneyland. It's Phantasmic, but they do different things in that one, right?
So the only big difference between that and the one in Hollywood Studios is that they have a pirate ship. So there's no arena for it. It actually takes place on Rivers of America in Disneyland.
Oh wow.
And so there's the Mark Twain, which is the riverboat, but then they also have a pirate ship, the Columbia, I believe it's called. And so there's a scene in Phantasmic where you've got Captain Hook and Peter Pan fighting on the Columbia as they're going around. That's the only real difference, but that's like maybe 30 seconds of the show. Everything else, because I've seen both, start to finish, they're both the same. Although I hear that now they're changing the Disneyland one because
they are,
again, going back to how they work in their new tech, is that a lot of these new effects are going to be added into Phantasmic as well in Disneyland.
Now, how do you feel about that? Like, are you sad that they're changing it, or
No,
okay? So you feel okay with it? You're okay with them changing that up?
I've seen it enough times that I'm like I'll watch it and I'll have a tear coming down my face at the end of the show, kind of thing.
Yeah. I'm with you. All right, all those shows get me going.
And so I'll absolutely watch it in its current state, but I'm just as excited to see how they're going to update it because, I mean, really, if you think about that show started like 20 years ago. So it's even longer running than Wishes. So I think it's due for some upgrades.
Yeah, that's good. And me personally, I love all of them, but I love Illuminations too. And there's been some pretty heavy rumors that they're going to replace Illuminations in the next couple of years. But that's a whole nother point altogether. Mm-hmm. But let's talk about some other things. I'm sad that Wishes is gone, but I'm excited for the new show. I think it's going to be a good thing. We're going to convince Damon to go and see it.
At least once.
At least once, Damon. Just go get some 5-hour energies or something.
Oh yeah, I don't know. Let's see.
If we get your kids to talk to you enough about it, will they convince you?
The way I'm looking at it is that by the time we go again, right? So figure that we're going on a cruise in October, we're going in August. We probably won't be back again until that next school year. I don't think we'll go over the course of that year, so maybe by then we'll have to do it.
Yeah,
we're actually talking about, again, you want to talk about a whole other issue. We're actually thinking about the Disney Alaska cruise that next summer. So I don't know, that's a whole different discussion.
Well, I'll say whenever you're back there next, I would at least try one night to see it. Yeah.
It's totally worth it because I mean, from all the things I'm reading, there's some pretty crazy platitudes that the blogs are throwing out there about it, which is surprising because a lot of times, like I said, they're a little negative when they get rid of things that are beloved. But it seems like this thing is really well done and really looks good. So, a couple rumor things that came up, and one that particularly makes me sad, and I want to hear from you guys about it. But it brings up an interesting topic, and we were talking Epcot earlier. There was something. Disney started surveying guests, and Disney surveys guests all the time, but a lot of times they survey guests because there's something specific they want to find out about, whether they want to get rid of or change, or they want to see what kind of backlash they're going to get. And so recently they put out a survey about Figment. I don't know about you guys. I love Figment. He's one of my favorite characters of all time. One of my fondest memories from being a child was my little Figment, stuffed animal. I loved Figment. He was my favorite when I was a kid. I would be very sad if they got rid of Figment. And those of you that don't know who Figment is, he's a little purple dragon that shows up in Journey into Imagination. It kind of seems like based on this survey that they sent out, they were asking questions like, do you know about Figment? What do you think about Figment? Do you care about Figment? And it kind of, in my mind, makes it sound like they're going to get rid of Figment. So I don't know what you guys are thinking. Is this a bigger overhaul of Epcot? I mean, they've already announced they're going to do an overhaul of Epcot, and obviously Journey into Imagination is one of those rides that a lot of people hate. I mean, that's
I like it.
I do too, actually. We always I enjoy it. I know everybody doesn't feel that way though.
No, and I think the problem is that when you I mean, what do? I mean, do you update that? I mean, that's a kind of a tough ride to update. You kind of know what I mean?
I've got a theory about that actually.
Okay.
So
I'll let you go first.
Trevor, you got a theory too?
Yes, I do.
I think the absolute perfect thing to replace that with is you make that an Inside Out ride, right? You have that, you have it be the train of thought, like they had in the movie and Inside Out. You could, and I actually think you could keep Figment in there, even though Figment's not in the movie. He's the figment of your imagination, right? So, there was
to Bing Bong.
Yeah, exactly. So you have Bing Bong there, you have some Figment going on, but you could. It makes sense to me because it's one of those overlays they could do where they could literally turn that into an Inside Out ride somehow. That's my theory, but who knows, right? I mean, but what's your theory, Trevor? It sounds like you have one.
So first of all, Figment has already had an overhaul.
That's true.
In the past.
Yes.
So I never went on it before the overhaul. I know a lot of people look at it with rose-colored glasses and they say it was better before. I don't mind the new version with Eric Idle instead of Dreamcatcher. Mm-hmm. But the way I look at it is I don't see them necessarily investing the money to do another overhaul because they've already done it once, and I get the feeling that whatever they did, there may be some technical limitations behind why they wouldn't just rip it out and put in Inside Out. Like there may be something else to the ride that we don't know about.
That's
as
true.
There always is. Like they could have a Yeti problem going on. So I honestly think that they may, if there's a larger overhaul of Epcot as a whole, I can see that entire pavilion just getting pulled out and then something net new going in.
You mean like bulldoze the whole thing and start over again?
Yeah.
Kind of like what they did with with Horizons, where they just knocked all of Horizons down and just put in Mission Space.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
And that like I said, there is a precedent for it there too.
Yeah, Horizons.
They're not afraid to do that. So
yeah, because Horizons was pretty beloved, and it's not like the Imagination Pavilion is really all that beloved, right? I mean,
yeah. And the thing is like you, I like Figment as well. I like the character, and I think for me, it's I'm drawn more to those fringe characters. Like I know everybody likes, Winnie the Pooh, Mickey Mouse, and stuff. I like seeing some of the weirder oddball characters that not necessarily everybody knows about. So personally, I would like to see it stay in some version.
Well, and for me, you kind of can't get rid of Figment because Figment was like a character created for Epcot, right? I mean, that was like a character they created for Epcot, for Imagination Pavilion.
Yeah, but if they do an overhaul, they may decide that whatever the new version of Epcot is, because they've gone away from like interventions and all that stuff, right? So
Yeah.
so I mean, I guess it depends on what the actual theming would be of Epcot, because right now Epcot really doesn't have a good identity overall. Like you still got the World Showcase, but the rest of it is all very kind of jumbled, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it's a little bit of it's kind of lost its way a little bit, which I think is that's actually a topic for a whole podcast for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'll be interested. I'm hoping at D23 this year that they announce some things of what they're going to do, because they've already pretty much said that they're going to overhaul that whole thing, but who knows what that's going to look like. So, I mean, me personally, I like Ellen's Energy Adventure. It needs to be updated, but I enjoy that 45-minute ride. So
the AC boat cruise.
Yes, that's exactly right. Half the people are asleep. It's a good time.
Yep.
Damon, do you care at all about Figment? You want it gone?
I like Figment. I mean, I'm okay with keeping Figment. My thing is that, and again, this is something that I noticed at Universal and I don't actually like, is that, they're more based on their limitations of how much land they have and what they do. I'd like to see Disney just grow bigger. And if that means that, new rides and new ideas are just in addition to, rather than refurbs of rides and knocking down rides, I'd rather see that for a multitude of reasons. I understand from the monetary side of it, it becomes a little bit of a problem. But, let's keep that. Let's make more things. Let's make it bigger. Let's get more, spread out when it comes to people. You can change your capacity levels and still make that same amount of money. That's me, though. That's my opinion. I don't like to see stuff. I'm nostalgic in general, except when it comes to nighttime shows, because I don't care about any of them. But when it comes to rides, right, like, I want all the rides to stay forever.
Fair enough. Right. So actually, that brings up a good point. I'm sorry, Trevor, you were going to say something?
Well, I was going to say, speaking of adding versus taking away, why don't we move over to Star Wars Land?
See, well, this hurts my feeling right here, because I read this and was like, this will make me mad.
You think it'll make you mad? Why is it going to make you mad?
With the facade being improved and closed as it's not being torn down. See, I thought it was going to be torn down. I was going to be mad.
No, so what they're doing is really weird. So they all, if all you guys out there that are familiar with Hollywood Studios, where the old it was like the
city.
Yeah, it was like the New York City street, and they had like the you take pictures there, and it was like you're on a street.
What was the best thing about that, though? What was your favorite thing about that area? Because I have a favorite thing about that area.
I didn't really. My favorite thing about that was the Osborne family lights. That's about it. During Christmas time, that was my only. I mean, I enjoyed it. It was fun. I mean, it was the detail of it was cool. But there was.
What my favorite thing about that area is that that's where they did a lot of the impromptu character stuff.
Oh yeah, the Streetmosphere stuff. Yeah.
Yes. So for me, probably some of my favorite times with the kids in general were there, because you'd randomly walk through that area and you would see characters that you didn't even think Disney had costumes for. Because, again, they're nowhere else. Like, they were literally nowhere else. Now, listen, as Disney gets bigger and they put more of those picture-taking places around, okay, there's some characters now that I've seen, but when we used to go there, that was my favorite spot. We used to see characters again that Maleficent before the reintro of the movie. When would you really ever see her, right? Like there was some characters there that, again, a lot of the Incredibles characters, now again you could see them other places, but before they changed that area where you can see them now, where that used to be art stuff over there, right? So that's where you would see them in these random, like I said, where the New York facade was. So that was why I love that. I misread that, so I'm glad they're keeping that.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing is that they tore down all of it except for the one New York building facade, and now they're improving it and they're closing it in. They're making it a building, which no one really seems to know why, which is really interesting, because I don't know. Obviously, it's not going to be in the Star Wars Land part of things, and now that that area is technically called Muppet Courtyard. So, I mean, I guess it could kind of sort of fit in with the Muppets, sort of, maybe. I don't know.
Well, they go to New York an awful lot.
They do.
Yeah, they kind of have that Broadway thing going on, right? So maybe
That's
it'll
true.
be more of a Broadway look instead of just a New York street necessarily.
Well, and Pizza Rizzo does kind of have a New York pizzeria feel to it, like a lot of like the brick and stuff. I'm just curious what they're going to put in there. There's a lot of speculation that it's going to be like a Club 33 lounge when they're going to bring that there. Someone said there could be a DVC lounge. Maybe they'll put a store in there. I just think it's weird. It's a strange thing for them to be doing.
Maybe it will be a ride.
I don't know if there's enough space for it though. I don't know how much space is there. It's weird.
Again, we went on that Jimmy Fallon ride in Universal, and that literally takes up almost no space. That ride.
Really?
Yeah.
But that's like a VR thing though, right?
Correct.
It's like Star Tours.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, again, when you put something like, when you talk about space, when you start doing VR, which again is a lot of what these newer rides are, how much space do you need?
I just really hope they don't do that though, because honestly, I feel that a lot of those rides are probably the cheapest and easy way out, which is why I like Disney, because they don't do the cheap and easy way out.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes they do.
I'm all for more stuff.
They've had a few, yeah.
Yeah.
I've gotten to the point with Disney again. If there was any sort of knock that I could have on the past few times that I've gone, it's just the capacity numbers. And listen, I get it. A lot of it has to do with when I went and what was going on and what was open. But and again, I have to say this, unfortunately for Trevor, is that Halloween is no joke. Those numbers are at like 99.8% capacity. I'm looking at them, doing a little bit more, expanding a little bit more out, giving us a little bit more breathing room in general.
Well, and I think that's why, like Star Wars and Toy Story Land, we're in a transition phase right now, right?
Yep.
And Hollywood Studios especially
was always small to
it.
begin with. Yep.
Yeah. Always a half-day park, and it was intended to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I think so. This is my crystal ball prediction: is that once Star Wars Land and Toy Story Land are nearing completion, you're going to see them start on Epcot. You're going to see a big chunk of Epcot go down.
Yep.
And then there's going to be a whole bunch of remodel. And I think a lot of it will be like around Innoventions and that kind of area.
Yeah, and Ellen's Energy Adventure. There were some pretty strong rumors that was actually going to get torn down completely a couple months ago because they were putting up test balloons for sight lines and things like that. But that seemed to fall off a little bit. But and then also Mission Space went down for a mysterious like long refurbishment that no one knows why. Right now, actually, it's going on, and they haven't announced anything about that, but there's been some speculation they're going to spruce that up and change that up a little bit, too. But I think you're totally right. Once they finish all this major construction that's going on, then they're going to move on to... it seems like they're going to do a whole overhaul of all of Epcot. Which, and I mean, including maybe some new countries that and some rides at some of the countries, there's been a pretty strong rumor for a while they're going to bring the Ratatouille ride to France and, maybe bring there was a long time ago in the original design of Epcot, there was supposed to be a Matterhorn type of ride at oh gosh, which country?
Norway?
I think it might have been Norway. Yeah, I can't remember, but there was supposed to be a Matterhorn type of ride there too. So it kind of seems like I'm really interested to see if they announce anything at D23 about what they're going to do going forward. Because Innoventions is pretty much there's nothing left in Innoventions except for that Color Utopia thing, which is cool, but that's all that's left. It's pretty much a character meet and greet now, and that's. They
still have the make you sick roller coasters.
No, those are gone.
Nope.
Are they gone now?
Yeah, they're gone.
Some of All Thrills closed down, kind of with short notice. It was like a couple week notice. I think they lost the sponsor, so they just shut it down.
And also on that, because there's also that restaurant that's never open on the other side of Chess Track as well, right?
The Odyssey, right? Yeah. They use it for special events. I've wondered why they haven't turned that into it. Maybe just because Epcot has so many restaurants, they just didn't feel like they need another one. But I don't know.
It's also not really a good use of space, right? And
it's not.
If you look at it, that's all except for Test Track, everything else around there really needs some sprucing up, right?
Oh, for sure. I think they know that too, and it's just they have so many projects going on right now. It's just
So here, talk about nostalgia. Who likes the new Test Track versus the old Test Track?
I like both. I honestly think that the new Test Track was them I think eventually that's not going to be called Test Track anymore. That's going to be called Tron.
Yeah. I
Like
was gonna
that,
say I like it because it's like Tron, but not really.
yeah, like I think they were literally doing that as a test to see how people liked it, so they could eventually make another Tron movie and then call it Tron. So, but I mean, I don't know. I liked both of them. I mean, I think the new one is fun. I think the new one brings a different dynamic to it, just because it's so dark in there. Like you feel like you're going even faster than you are, which is the same trick they play on you when you're in Space Mountain and things like that. I think it may almost makes it a little more thrilling. But the old one was so was fun and kind of silly, and
Yeah.
I just like both of them. I think they were both fun. So, Damon,
Yeah.
You disagree, Damon? I heard a scoff.
I totally disagree, but that's okay.
So wait, you don't go on it at all anymore? Like you're?
Oh,
you're
I
just,
do. I
okay.
just don't like it. It looks cheap.
Oh, you
Like
think
that
so?
to me, it feels
Like-
looks cheap. It looks like someone said, you know what, I don't really have a lot of money, so let's just throw some lights in here and we'll call it Test Track. Listen, I like the car aspect of creating your own car and stuff. That that's definitely far better in the new version. But
Sure.
no, I could definitely leave
Yeah.
that one alone. Which then brings us right to our kind of our next topic is Jungle Cruise, right? Again, an old school ride.
Yeah.
That Disney, what you said to I'm reading off of Tom's notes here, everybody. So that the Disney refuted the attraction will be changed.
Yeah, because The Rock came out, so because
Yes.
the source for all your Disney news should be The Rock, but he's they're making a Jungle Cruise movie, and I don't think anybody's really sure.
Has it been greenlit though?
Oh yeah, no, it's happening.
The
'cause-
movie is.
Yeah, the
Okay.
movie's definitely happening. But The Rock came out and said that he was going to be working with Disney on updating the ride, and of course the whole Disney universe went into crazy panic mode, and so Disney had to come out and say, no, the attraction's not being changed. It's going to be fine. But that's the question, like, eventually they're going to have to do something with those really old rides, right? They can't just leave them the same forever, right? Or
Why?
can they? I don't know.
I don't know. See, I say why, right?
Well-
Like I like that.
I do too. I'm not one that sits here and thinks that I need things need to change, but the general public, I feel, sometimes thinks otherwise.
The thing about the Jungle Cruise is that it's fairly unique in that it's one of those rides that was touched directly by Walt, with the fact that somebody got on it, went through the whole ride, got off, and said, well, I never need to do that again. And he was like shocked and appalled that somebody said that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what started the whole skipper thing, right? So the thing is I don't think it's so much missing the Jungle Cruise. I think it's missing the charm of it with the skipper. So if they're going to update it, the one thing that they need to not do is get rid of the skippers. They
we don't
need
want to see an animatronic rock as the skipper.
No.
No, it should not be. It should not be scripted. It should not be like if it's scripted and it's just corny jokes all the way through. That's a fail
Yeah.
because
Agreed.
that's going to be repetitive. That's going to be okay. It was funny the first time, but I've heard this joke 50 times. The great thing about the Jungle Cruise as it stands right now is that every time I get on with the skipper, there is. Like some of them follow the script, some of them can be really amazing with jokes and the delivery and everything else that comes with it. So if they're going to do any kind of revamp on it, maybe change some of the scenes, maybe update the boats. I know they actually updated the dock in Disneyland because the old dock was like treacherous to
Falling
get in and out of.
Yeah.
But they can't change the fundamental fact that the reason that ride is the way it is because it has that value of coming back to it.
But there is another ride like that, isn't there? Isn't that is the movie ride? Isn't that kind of like that as well?
Yeah, but again, the movie ride is kind of forced.
Yeah.
Because there's the scenes like at some point you get either the Western guy or the gang guy that come out and swap out and it's a lot more scripted. Like they're forced to kind of stop what they're doing and what they're saying and follow the script. If with Jungle Cruise, like they're moving through and they're kind of keeping their own pace. Sometimes they'll go faster, sometimes they'll go slower, but they can also stop and engage you. They don't even have they can miss entire sections and it doesn't matter because they're still doing their thing, and as long as they keep the pacing, it's fine.
Here's an interesting question for you, Trevor. So as a Disneyland person, and you were just talking about the rides that Walt worked on, were Disneyland fans freaking out when they changed Pirates of the Caribbean to be like the movie? Because that was an update that they did, to a classic ride that Walt had his hand in. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that was the last one that Vol worked on too, wasn't it?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. So the general feel that I've gotten from a lot of people is initially they were kind of rolled their eyes at, oh, okay, Jack Sparrow is in there, but the ride itself didn't fundamentally change. The ride it's all the same scenes. The only thing they've added in was that addition of the character to tie in with the movie. And the dialogue changed a little bit, but again, it's still Pirates of the Caribbean. It's not Pirates of the Caribbean Electric Boogaloo or whatever.
Sequel.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's still fundamentally the same ride. And that's the way I think they really got to push Jungle Cruise, is that, fine, do a couple of updates, but if they rip out the core of the ride, and I personally think the core of the ride is the skippers. If that part comes out,
Agreed,
then they're going to hurt themselves quite drastically. And then you'll have basically another Figment or Ellen's Energy Adventure where they'll be looking at it going, okay, like, do we keep this?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I totally agree. And I obviously Disney came out really quickly and refuted that it was going to happen, but I think it's interesting to just think about the fact that they might at some point do something with it. And even if you look at some videos of the Jungle Cruises across the world, they do some different things in the Jungle Cruises. But my favorite Jungle Cruise joke of all time, before we wrap up here, because we've been going on for a while here and we should wrap it up. I've only heard it once and I've never heard it again since then, is right when you're going into the cave, the skipper said, "I wonder what's in the cave," and she said, "Let's be honest, people, it's Disney World. It's probably a gift shop." And I've never heard it. I've never heard that joke since then. But I don't know if she went rogue and just and did that one, but it made that one was not a corny joke and it made me laugh. I thought it was clever. So, but yeah, so
yeah, that, like you said, that kind of stuff needs to stay around, in my opinion.
Absolutely, totally agree. Anything you want to add, Damon, before we wrap this thing up?
Nope.
No, the answer is no. If I can find the button that unmutes me, the answer is no.
All right. Trevor, if you could wrap us up here, that'd be great.
Okay, so for those people that are looking to get in contact with us, you can reach us by email at welcomehomepodcast@gmail.com. You can find our website at www.welcomehomepodcast.com. We're definitely looking for questions from listeners. If anybody's got anything, you can get a hold of us through either of those. You can also find us on social media, places such as Facebook at Welcome Home Podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Welcome Home Pod, and on Instagram at Welcome Home Pics.
Great. And so, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, to Welcome Home Podcast. We also would appreciate it if you are a listener of the show, if you would give us a review on iTunes or whatever service you listen through. Reviews are always appreciated, so we like to have those things out there. But make sure you subscribe so you get reminded every time we have a new episode. You can find our podcast on iTunes, Google Play Music, TuneIn, Stitcher, pretty much any podcast app you can find. You can also go on our website and get a link to our podcast from there. And just a reminder to our listeners, Welcome Home Podcast is for entertainment only. We are not employed by the Walt Disney Company, and as such, all opinions expressed on this show are our own. So please contact your DVC representative for more information. You can find me on PrinceCharmingVacations.com for your Disney vacation planning needs. Damon on his website.
Yep, bsckids.com. Like I said, we cover all the Disney shows and all that sort of good stuff.
So visit us on there. A big thank you to Nick Cotton for joining us today. That was an awesome segment. We would love to spend more time with him. We have a million questions for him, so we're going to try to get him back on as soon as we can. You can find Nick on dvcresalemarket.com. dvcresalemarket.com. You can also find them on Facebook at DVC Resale Market, and you can learn more about buying or selling from there. They have listings, and you can check out all the different things that they have available right now. Really, really great website, so check that out. So thank you guys so much for listening to Welcome Home Podcast. Join us next time for more Disney Parks discussion and, of course, more Disney Vacation Club talk. We hope to see you real soon.
This is Skipper Albert AWOL, the voice of the jungle, signing off from Welcome Home Podcast on the DVC.
When we hit a chair, how she can cuddle is no man's affair. I looked around from pole to pole, found her in a sugar bowl. Look out, here comes